Hey there everyone, and welcome to this WPBeginner interview. We have got a very, very special guest lined up for this interview, and I'm not going to introduce them, I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So Robert, for anyone who hasn't come across you and your work, can you introduce yourself and share what you have built and what you are currently working on right now?
I'm Robert Abela. I am Maltese, originally from Malta, but I live in the Netherlands. And around 13 years ago, I quit my corporate job. I always worked for software companies, startups, most of them. And I quit basically because I worked 13 years for the same company, and it was time for a change, nothing negative about it. And during that time, I had also discovered WordPress. So I started some basic stuff, writing some content. And since I had a background in software security, I started kind of like cleaning hacked websites and similar things. And yeah, after a year or so of doing these things, I kind of like wondered on me like why such a multi-user platform like WordPress doesn't have some sort of activity logging, which is quite handy, especially when it comes to cleaning hacked websites, because you want to go back and see what happened. Maybe if a user changed something, updated the plugin. So yeah, I developed the first version of WP Activity Log back then, one of the plugins that we have, and slowly started growing. And back then it was a hobby, turned into a part-time. Then around 5 years ago, it turned into a full-time. And now we're a team of 7 people, and we develop a number of plugins. Our company is called Melapress, and we develop WP Activity Log, WP2FA, which is a two-factor authentication plugin for WordPress, Melapress Login Security, which is a login and security policies plugin.
How important is security in WordPress?
It's very important. I mean, like, not just for WordPress, for any online device, any online software, be it a website, even like you see like network connected computers, it's very important. Because it's always at the risk of being hacked, and many people, when they look at security, it's like, okay, my website is not popular, my business is not popular, who's going to hack it? Most hacks have happened because malicious users would like resources, your device or your website's internet connection, the resources of the web server, to use them, for example, as a stepping stone for another attack, to hide their traces or to launch another attack. So any type of online software, be it a website or device like network, printer, or cameras, it's important for it to be secure. Within hours, as soon as a vulnerability is made public, as soon as the vulnerability advisory is published, within hours, it starts being exploited. Before, people used to have some sort of time window until they upgrade a plugin, for example, or before you can install a fresh new website install with admin username and password. And maybe it takes a few weeks until it gets hacked. Nowadays, it gets hacked within minutes. So it is very important. It's very important because let's assume someone wants to hack, again, for example, Google.com. They want to target Google. They're not going to hack Google through their own computer, of course. They're going to connect through a VPN, through the Tor network and all this stuff, and they're going to use other computers, other websites, or other servers as a stepping stone. So let's say, for example, I would connect through the Tor network, I would hack your website and then launch the attack from your website. Or if I want to launch a DDoS attack, a distributed denial of service attack, I need a lot of resources. So I'm going to hack thousands or hundreds of thousands of websites and program them. So at a certain time, they start sending traffic towards a target. So even if your website is not popular, it has something that malicious users need. It has bandwidth, it has an internet connection, it has bandwidth, and it has server resources, because the website is running on a server where there's CPU power, where there's memory, and that is needed to do other things, basically.
And what happens to my website once that happens?
There are a lot of side effects from a hacked website. The website could be down. If someone wanted specifically to damage your website, it could be defaced. They would change the page, the home page, and put a message there. For example, it's usually used for politics. Someone doesn't agree with a message of a particular website, they hack it to put on their message, like, we don't agree with this, or something like that. It could also be used to distribute malware. So, for example, every visitor that visits your website, their computer gets infected with malware. So it could be used by it could be the effect on it could be a lot. It really depends on what it's being used for. If it's being used, for example, if it's being hacked and it's being used as a stepping stone for another attack or for DDoS attacks, most probably you wouldn't even notice unless it's being used during the DDoS attack. It might be a bit slow or there would be too much server resources, and most probably you will be alerted by your web host, like, hey, your website is using a lot of bandwidth, it's using a lot of CPU usage, for example. But if it's used for this, most probably you won't even notice. You might notice it's a bit slow at some times, but the average user, who if they're not technical, they wouldn't even notice, unfortunately. It's not just about the average user. I mean, it depends on what the hacker would like to do, because if they want to use it for DDoS attacks or for their things, they don't want to be discovered and they want to stay on your website as long as possible. So they're going to be their traces will be very difficult to find. So it might take you actually months or years to find out. I mean, there have been hacks of big companies where it took them months to find out that, whoa, their websites, their whole web infrastructure or something has been hacked for a few months before they realized that they were hacked.
Where did you start off, and how did you get started in what you do?
So basically, I worked for 4 different software companies, but it was owned by the same owner. So the last company I was working with was called Acunetics, and we were developing a web security scanner. It's basically software that you can use to scan websites for vulnerabilities. The same like WP scan for WordPress, but this was purely for custom web applications. And back then we needed a blog, so we started looking around. I'm talking about 14 years ago. And we found out about WordPress. It was the very early days of WordPress, so security was very different back then. So we started using WordPress, and we started using it for our blog. But I also got interested because a friend of mine actually suggested it, and like, oh, this is interesting. We can do something for it. We can do a plugin. And I got genuinely interested in WordPress. So I started reading a bit about WordPress, writing content, and I started cleaning hacked websites. And then it clicked, like, well, we're cleaning hacked websites, but there's no sort of logging, basically, because you need to see when there's a hacked website, you need to see what happened before it got hacked. Was a plugin maybe updated? Maybe a user installed something? Maybe a user was created? And there was nothing like that. So I started developing the plugin, WP Activity Log. Like everything else, it started as a hobby. It was, and I got very good response. Within the first few months, I started getting downloads, and then the rest is history. Started slowly growing. I started investing more time in it and resources, basically. And around 5 years ago, basically, we started Melapress.
When you started Activity Log, what were you kind of hoping for when you started it?
As much as I loved the idea of having my own software company, because I always worked for software companies, I loved the idea, but I never aimed for it. I always thought like, it would. I'm not that type of person. Like I wouldn't be able to run a business or stuff like that. It was just really like I just started as a hobby. But when you start seeing the downloads, I think after 3 or 4 years, we launched the first premium add-on, and we started seeing money come. By the money, the first year, I think it was like, I don't know, maybe like $1,000. So it's not, but then it's like, oh, maybe this can happen actually, And so within a few years, it started growing. I spent a few years kind of like juggling between having. Doing some sort of jobs full time, like I was more like a consultant with different companies, earning enough, and then in the evening working on the plugin, and slowly I started moving. But it was never, although I wanted to have a software company, I never kind of like aimed for it. It's like, oh, let me start, and wow, it happened kind of. It's like it's almost by coincidence. It wasn't planned that it will grow to a full-time job, but it did.
What kind of opportunity did you spot there? Is that to be able to kind of say, hey, I can actually do this and I could do something for this?
Even to this day, you still see a lot of businesses relying on cleaning hacked websites. Maybe they're less popular, but back in the days, yes, there were so many hacked websites. It was a very common business model. Like, it wasn't very scalable, and it was a very difficult job because for a few reasons there were a lot of people doing it. So it became like a price competition, and you can only do so much, so you cannot scale. Also, it depends, like if someone has a backup of the website or something, you can at least, or they're using commercial plugins, you can compare things and slowly like restore their website and find out what's happening. If someone had their website hacked, everything was custom. Yeah, you have to go through the code yourself, try to find where things, where malware was injected, for example, try to remove the code, something breaks. So it wasn't even worth, and you have like, oh, there were prices, like people like, we'll clean your website for $99, and sometimes it could be a job which takes a couple of days, So it was very difficult. I did that mostly as a source of income, but also to learn. But on the side, I was also writing some articles, doing some research, and learning more. And yes, basically, while doing this job, I realized there should be some sort of logging capability, and maybe that helps when it comes to website cleanups. And then I'm not a developer per se. I can read and write code, but something that I can do in a week and a developer can do it properly in one day. So I always wanted to learn to write a bit of code, so I developed the first version of the plugin. It took me a few months playing around and breaking things, basically. So it was a good opportunity. Again, I was earning money from somewhere else, so it wasn't like I was depending on it. So it was more of a hobby. But then it took off, basically, and I started working with a developer. Nothing was planned. It was more like of an organic growth, slowly. But once we started seeing good traction with the logging plugin, then we stuck to it because, of course, we saw a lot of interest. The number of downloads were growing, and so we stuck to that project.
How were you marketing the plugin at the very start, or how were you hoping to get people to download it?
Until 5-6 years ago, everything happened organically. Sharing some blog posts, talking to some people, slowly building a newsletter as well, which is very common, having the website like, hey, would you like to, if you like this type of content, subscribe. And whoever subscribes, for example, whenever we release an update of the plugin, we just mention it on the newsletter as well. So we send the newsletter with the information we promise, like about security and information, but maybe at the bottom like, hey, but we also have this plugin, check it out, we just released a version update. So it was all mostly everything like that. We never spent a penny on marketing before 6 years ago. It was all organic and just connections, talking to people. What helped, by the way, in 2013, like 12 years ago, I went to the first WordCamp Europe in Leiden. And when it's good because you meet people face to face and you make connections, and it's much easier than to do something together. Like if I send an email to someone right now who I've never met in person, and I want to, for example, to exchange a guest blog post, most probably they receive tens or hundreds of emails every day about like this, and they will ignore you. But if you know them, you've met them in person, and I was going since then, I kept on going to different WordCamps, different meetups in the cities where I lived. Then, of course, it's different because you know the people, and you can maybe brainstorm something, work on something together.
How did you learn all this, or how did you know how to do all this? Or was this literally, did you find things out on the internet, or just talking to people? How did you put it together? Because it seems like it was, you were doing things like blog posts, newsletters, going to WordCamp and things like that. How did you work all that out?
As a systems engineer for a software company, you deal with every department of that company because you are managing the systems, of course, for everyone. You're dealing with the marketing department, you're dealing with the sales department, you're dealing with the developers, with the testing department, with the R&D. So you roughly as a systems engineer, you get a good understanding of the inner workings of a software company, what should be done and not. I mean, of course, you don't know everything, but you know very well what systems they are using. Oh, these guys send a newsletter every week. Oh, that they get, whenever someone downloads their software, their trial software, they send them an email to follow, like drip campaigns. Like many people don't know about drip campaigns, for example. Like everyone uses them nowadays. Like if you download the software, you start getting emails every so often. We should get all these things, but I've learned them all indirectly through my job as a systems engineer. Because when the marketing team had a problem, oh, we have a problem, we cannot send this. Okay, what are you trying to do? Oh, we're trying to send a newsletter for this, and you automatically learn about everything and how things work. Of course, you don't have a perfect understanding of everything, so you become more of jack of all trades. But at least you start, and that is enough. At least it worked for me. That was enough for the first 6-7 years to do it everything myself. Nowadays, of course, we are a team, and I always aim to hire people who are better than me at some things because I'm not that good at marketing. I know just the basics. So if you hire the way I look at it, I get my marketing from 1 out of 10 is 1 or 2. So I want someone who knows 8. So at least I've built 1 and 2, and then they can take it to level 8, And it's the same with development. It's the same with sales, outreach, partnerships, and stuff like that, On top of what I've learned from working as a systems engineer with a company, by going to WordCamps and meetups, you talk to other people. I was lucky, especially the phase during which Melapress, back then it was called WPY Security, was kind of like a struggling part-time before I switched to full-time. That was like a phase of 6 years. It was too long. And it does get a bit frustrating, sometimes, like, because you see big companies, like WP Forms, Yoast, or all these big companies, which you think it's an overnight success, but it's actually a long time. But you only see your problems. So it's a bit frustrating because you're alone, it's part-time, you're doing the full-time. But at least at meetups and at WordCamps, I met people in the same position as I was. So you could share ideas, we could help each other because we were both in the same waters, roughly. And yeah, it feels a bit less lonely. It feels a bit more positive kind of thing. You get a bit more of positive vibe. And yeah, you build slowly and you help each other. So yeah.
How important to you as a founder and someone that's built something is feedback?
I still, every morning, I like to triage the support tickets myself. Purely because I feel that if I don't do that, I feel like I would be segregating myself in my own world, and you're not seeing actually how users are using your plugins every day, what type of problems they're encountering. Don't get me wrong, the support team also gives me feedback. We've seen this issue and stuff like that, so they do. Again, it's some sort of feedback. But I like to keep in touch with the customers and with the users because for a few reasons. First of all, yes, people give you ideas. I always use the 80-20 rule. Like if it's something that we think 80% of the people are going to use it, then we're going to give it priority. If it's something that we think only 20% or less of the people are going to use it, then maybe it gets much lower priority. We're not sure even if we're not going to do it. So that helps a lot, and you need some sort of filtering. But in general, yes, even it's not the first time where someone sends a support email and it's like, what are you trying to do with the plugin? And then you realize we designed the plugin to be used. I mean, it's a logging plugin, but you designed the plugin to be used as a security logging. But then you realize, for example, with time we realized that the plugin is actually used more often, not just for security. Usually was the last thought or the afterthought kind of thing, but primarily it was used, I don't know, to monitor editors, what they're doing. It's a big magazine website, for example, and they have a number of editors. They want to monitor how many articles they update per week, for example, or it's some sort of online learning platform, and they want to monitor who is finishing the courses or who's not finishing the courses. It's like, so you get these ideas like, oh, you design your plugin to be used for A, B, and C, but people are using it for A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and this side. So you do. So feedback is extremely important.
What decisions early on do you think helped activity logs stand out from any other plugin?
The difference between like the best plugins out there in each category and those which follow kind of thing is always maybe that 10%. So it's like they have a good enough product, it's working, it's being downloaded, it's selling, and kind of like they stop there. We always like to, honestly, like at everything we do, we always go that extra. If it takes an extra few days before we release an update, let's do it, because that is what sets us apart. Not just our plugin, as I said, like if you look at every other plugin, I don't know, like if you look at SEO plugin, there are a bunch of them, of SEO plugins. But if you look at the top 1 or 2 of them, compared to the rest, they just have some small extra features, which usually take much more effort to develop. So instead of stopping at 90%, they went up to 95, 96%. They put in that extra effort. So this is very important. But I also believe, apart from the software itself, it's also the service that you give. Support is really important, because you can have the best software in the world. If you don't have support, slowly, you start losing customers. And support is really important. That's when customers come to you, even for users, and you support them. You show them, okay, it's a bug or not, and you release an update, or explain to them like what the issue is. Maybe it's a misconfiguration. It's not necessarily a bug, but when you help users, they appreciate it. And especially nowadays, if you have multiple plugins, when, for example, someone who is using ActivityLog, it happens quite often, and they want now to look into 2FA plugin, for example, they wouldn't even research other 2FA plugins. They just go use ours because they know they've always got good service from us.
When did you know it was time to build a second plugin, and how did you prioritize what came next?
We were started working with some guest authors on our website, and I wanted them to use 2FA. And all of the 2FA plugins out there, which work, by the way, and work very well, but they were developed from developers, by developers to developers. So they're not easy to use. So you have to tell the user, listen, this is how you configure 2FA, and this is how you do it, etc. And the idea is like, is it possible there's no like easy to use plugin for 2FA? And all we did, but yeah, the first version. So okay, I also like the subject. I also liked authentication, and it's also security. 3, I never liked the idea of relying on one plugin as an income source, because like at least if something happens, I mean, we're always doing your best, of course, but you can never say never. So it's good to have kind of like a few different products, a few different income streams. So I said, yeah, why don't we create a plugin that at least literally it does the same job as the other plugins, but put a wizard on top of it and add something useful, because no other plugins had it back then. Add some sort of policies where I can enforce users. So I don't have to call them, hey, can you please set up 2FA? No, you enforce it. So the next time they log in, they are prompted, please set up 2FA. Simple things, but that made a big difference. In fact, our WP2FA plugin is the youngest 2FA plugin in the WordPress. If you look at the WordPress repository, and it's also the second most popular, purely because some small things that make a big difference.
And how important do you think that was for your success, really, that you started off with a problem, developed the solution to that problem, used it yourself, and then went, okay, other people might find this useful?
I think it's very important because you understand the use case. Like I'm not an SEO expert. I mean, if you ask me to, and we have developers ourselves, yes, we can develop an SEO plugin, but I don't know the SEO area. I don't know what users are looking for in a SEO plugin. So most probably we can develop an SEO plugin. Will it be good? I seriously doubt it. But because I have experience in logging, authentication, systems engineering, and stuff like that, I know roughly what's expected and what can be done with 2FA, for example. So it's much easier for us to develop something like that,
How do you evaluate new plugin ideas now?
The way to measure it, like, will it take off? To be honest, we always try to create an MVP, minimum viable product, even just if it's a small beta concept plugin. Let's say, okay, this might have potential. In fact, we just launched a plugin a few months ago. It's the Melapress role editor. It's basically a custom user role editor for WordPress. Clearly there's market, because if you look at the other plugins, like I think the most popular one is the user role editor with 800,000 active installations. So definitely there's a market, and there are a few other ones. We invested just a few months, 4 months. It's a risk. Let's invest 3-4 months, not over one, of course, developer. Build the first concept, put it out there, send a newsletter. Now that of course we have a much larger audience, because we're not starting from zero, because we have the other plugins. Send a newsletter, ask a few other people, test it. If you see a few downloads coming up, maybe invest another month or two to release a few follow-up updates just to see it running. And if you see like you're getting good feedback, then it's okay. The question is like, where do you stop and say, this is not taking off, how much resources I'm going to keep on spending on it, and say, okay, it's not going to work, or this seems to be working, and you're going to invest more time on it.
And how important do you think it is to hire really good people in the positions?
It's really important to find good people, really, really important, because especially as a small company, you rely on them, and people make especially this size, every person has an influence on the company, as in the end result, even if it's the product, but to deliver the product and sell, there are so many components apart from development, the design, the drip campaigns, as I was saying, the videos, the marketing, the testing, the support, how customers sees us. So everyone is important within the company. So it's very important that you find the right people. I really try my best to find people who know more than me on what, like as I said, like marketing or even testing. Like I started my career as a software tester, but I'm talking about, 24 years ago. So software testing changed a lot. I mean, of course, I kept in touch and I know what roughly was happening. But I want someone who comes and said, oh, no, like this maybe is not good enough. We should do this. And that knows much more new things that I don't know. So I want them to bring that on board. If I just want people to listen to me, to what I do, I can just recruit the cheapest people. Okay, this is the list, what you have to do, go and do it, kind of thing. But no, I want people with whom I can have very, very good discussions and very, very good things.
If you were starting out now from scratch, starting out again as a solo builder, what kind of things would you be looking at now, and what kind of things would you use as resources to kind of gather knowledge and things like that if you were starting out?
For me, it's different now because the first time I've done it, when I started Melapress, it was, and that's why I always say, like, it's not that I didn't want a software business. I never planned it. Everything happened like, oh, let's try this. Oh, it's working. Oh, let's try this. It just, everything grew organically. Now, if I had to do, and because of that approach, which I had up until 5 years ago, up until Melapress was formed, and we took things more seriously, because as I said, like, it was still a part-time hobby-ish kind of thing. We are doing a number of changes nowadays, and a number of things that, we've done that because we never thought about it. So one thing I would do nowadays, most probably plan a bit more, do a bit more, take a bit, be a bit less impulsive, and make more informed decisions. But it's like, oh, this is nice, let's try it. Oh, this is nice, let's try it. And then you end up 2-3 years later, like, now we have to reverse this. How can, So definitely, I think a bit less impulsive, a bit more planning, basically as we've been running for the last 4 or 5 years instead of the first 8-9 years. Like, oh, that's nice, let's try this. Definitely, that would be the biggest change, yes.
Well, thanks so much, Robert, for doing this interview. There's a lot of great information in there. It's really great to see your journey. If anyone wants to get in touch with you or find out a little bit more about what you do, what kind of things, how can they do that?
I'm on X, I'm on LinkedIn mostly for work. I'm on LinkedIn as well, Robert Abela. If you search on Google Robert Abela, you won't find much about me because the Prime Minister of Malta is also called Robert Abela, so you'll find more about him. But if you dig a bit, if you type Robert Abela WordPress at least, or Melapress, then of course. But yes, mostly on LinkedIn or on our company website. We have the contact us page, so if people have any questions, they can always get in touch. We always, one thing I can guarantee for sure is always from day one, regardless of our size and how much customers we have, we always check our emails. By the way, in fact, some people sometimes are surprised because we do send drip campaigns when someone buys the plugin, and sometimes like actually replies to them like, yeah, I know you're not going to reply, but A, B, and C. It's like, and I actually reply like, oh, I never thought you'd reply. Yeah, we do check the emails. If we receive the emails, we're going to reply. So yes, definitely, we can get in touch through our website as well, which is melapress.com. Yeah.